Okay, let's just jump right in. We're going to start today's deep dive with a claim that sounds like it's straight out of a comic book, but it's completely real.
It really is.
We're talking about a vertebrate, a creature with a spine that can regrow an entire severed limb. I mean, perfectly. Muscle, nerves, bone, the works.
And it doesn't stop at a limb. It can repair serious damage to its own brain, its spinal cord, even its heart.
And this is the part that gets me. It does it all without a single scar.
That's the defining feature. Perfect recovery. It's not just patching a hole. There's no scar tissue, no fibrosis. This animal is basically living proof that permanent damage isn't, a biological rule.
Right. And this animal is the axolotl, Ambystoma mexicanum. It's a salamander, and it's only native to what's left of Lake Chocomulco near Mexico City.
Even the name is amazing. It comes from the old Nahuatl language, meaning water dog or water monster. It's tied to the Aztec god Yendel, who supposedly turned into one to escape being sacrificed.
So for this deep dive, we're really focusing on two huge ideas here. First, this concept of neoteny, why they're basically perpetual teenagers.
And second, what their absolutely massive genome can teach us about, well, about switching those same regenerative abilities back on in mammals, including us.
Let's start there with the permanent juvenile idea. It sounds like a fun quirk, but you're saying it's the entire foundation for these biological miracles.
It is the absolute foundation. Neoteny is, well, it's a fascinating evolutionary path. Think about a typical frog or another salamander.
Yeah, they start as tadpoles or larvae in the water.
Exactly. And then they hit this huge developmental switch, metamorphosis. They grow lungs, lose their gills, their body completely rebuilds for life on land.
But the axolotl just doesn't. It decides to stay home.
Precisely. It reaches sexual maturity, it breeds, it lives its whole adult life, but it keeps all its juvenile features. Those incredible feathery external gills, the big tail fin. It stays fully aquatic. This is called paedomorphosis.
So what's stopping it? If all its relatives are making that jump to land, is it just missing the genes for it?
It's not about missing genes at all. It's about signaling. The whole process of metamorphosis in amphibians is kicked off by thyroid hormones.
Okay.
The axolotl has basically evolved to turn that signal way, way down. Either it doesn't produce enough of the hormone, or its body's receptors have become less sensitive to it.
Did you force it to in a lab?
But you can. If you inject them with those hormones, they will metamorphose into a terrestrial salamander.
Mm.
But it's not good for them. They tend to have health problems and live much shorter lives.
So the body itself seems to prefer staying in that juvenile state. And that brings us to the medical link, right? Juvenile tissue is just different.
It's so much more plastic, the cells are less specialized, they can move and divide more easily, and critically, they just don't have the same tendency to form scar tissue. By staying in that state, the axolotl never flips the switch that, in most of us, locks in tissue specialization and turns on aggressive scarring.
Which begs the question, why? Why would evolution choose that path for them? Why did the axolotl give up on land when its ancestors were clearly heading that way?
That is the big evolutionary puzzle, and we have to be clear. Axolotls are not primitive. They're highly specialized. Their ancestors almost certainly metamorphosed.
So the machinery's still there, it's just been switched off.
Exactly, it was actively suppressed. And the reason seems to be their very specific environment in central Mexico.
What was so special about Lake Chocomulco?
Think about the conditions. High altitude, cold, incredibly stable water. It was a permanent, reliable aquatic home. Now, contrast that with the land around it, which was likely harsh, dry, and seasonally unstable.
So if you're an axolotl ancestor, you have a choice. You can spend a ton of energy rebuilding your entire body for land.
Only to face a very risky, unpredictable environment. Or you could just stay in the water where it's safe and the food is consistent. Natural selection favored the easier path.
Stay a kid, reproduce earlier, and don't risk the move.
It's a perfect example of what we call heterochrony evolution, working by changing developmental timing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't some huge, complex invention. It was just small tweaks to their hormone regulation.
So staying young was the ultimate survival strategy. Let's get into what that strategy allows them to do, the regeneration itself. Because the scope of it is just... it's hard to wrap your head around.
It really is. This
Yeah.
is the absolute gold standard. We're talking a full limb from the shoulder down. Bone, muscle, blood vessels, and perfect nerve connections.
But it's not just limbs.
No. They can regenerate parts of their spinal cord, their retinas, even sections of their brain, and crucially, their heart muscle.
Okay, so let's compare. A human gets a bad heart injury, a heart attack. Our body's first response is to patch it.
Right. We flood the area with what are called fibroblasts, and they lay down a collagen patch, scar tissue. It stops the bleeding, but it's not functional muscle. It permanently weakens the heart.
The axolotl just says no to the patch.
It completely overrides that system. The wound closes fast, yes, but the fibrotic process never even starts. Instead, something incredible happens. Cells near the injury, they de-differentiate.
Meaning they forget what they are.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
A muscle cell or a skin cell reverts to a more basic stem-like state. All these cells gather together and form a little nub, a mass called the blastema. That is the rebuilding crew.
But how does the blastema know what to build? How does it not just create a useless lump of tissue?
That's the magic of positional memory. The cells literally remember where they came from. They know if they're supposed to be building a pinky finger or an elbow. They rebuild the limb with the exact perfect geometry of the original.
Wow.
And it is a highly controlled process. It's completely dependent on nerve signals. If you sever the nerves leading to the limb, regeneration fails. It proves this is a coordinated developmental event, not just chaotic growth.
You mentioned the immune system is a huge piece of this puzzle. For us, inflammation and healing go hand in hand, but for them, it's different.
It's the pivotal piece of the puzzle, I think.
Ah.
Their immune response is much more muted than ours. Our inflammatory response signals for scarring. There's signals for rebuilding.
And it comes down to a specific cell.
It does, a type of immune cell called a macrophage. In humans, macrophages clean up debris and then call in the fibroblasts to start scarring.
Okay.
In axolotls, the macrophages clean up the debris, and then they release signals that tell the blastema to start growing. In fact, if you remove these macrophages from an axolotl, it can't regenerate. It forms a scar, just like we do.
So inflammation for them is a gateway to rebuilding, not a roadblock.
Perfectly put.
All of this precision, this control, it leads to the biggest paradox of all, which is the genome itself.
Right, you'd think the instruction manual for this would be sleek and efficient.
Right.
But it's the exact opposite. The axolotl genome is one of the largest ever sequenced. It's about 32 billion base pairs.
32 billion, and I just want to put that in context for everyone listening. The human genome is around 3 billion, so this is 10 times larger.
A library-size operating manual. But here's the kicker for medical research. It's not 10 times larger because it's full of new magical regeneration genes that we don't have.
So what is all that extra DNA?
It's mostly huge stretches of non-coding regulatory DNA. The power isn't in gene invention, it's in gene regulation.
Which means a lot of the genes they use for regeneration, we actually have them too. They're just off.
That's the working theory. We likely carry the same ancestral programs, but evolution silenced them in mammals, probably because a quick scar was more advantageous for survival on land than a slow, perfect rebuild. The holy grail isn't finding a new gene, it's figuring out how to flip our own dormant switches back on.
But if they're constantly flipping that switch, starting massive cell division to rebuild organs, how do they not get cancer? In a mammal, that would be a recipe for tumors.
And that's what makes them so invaluable for oncology. They almost never get cancer. They have some incredibly robust, though still mysterious, tumor suppression system that keeps that rapid cell division perfectly in check. They show us that regeneration and cancer are not two sides of the same coin.
Let's talk about the direct applications for human health. If we crack this, where do we see the first impact?
I think nerve repair is a big one. Spinal cord injuries are permanent because our nerves don't regrow and reconnect properly. Axolotls are a living blueprint for how to guide axons across large gaps to restore function.
And the heart. You mentioned the heart.
Absolutely. After a heart attack, the scar tissue leads to heart failure. Axolotls just regrow perfect heart muscle. If we could learn how to coax our own heart cells to re-enter the cell cycle, even a little bit, it would revolutionize cardiac care.
And it goes beyond just big injuries, right? The fibrosis?
Yes. This research is relevant for any condition where scarring causes the problem. Think about burn victims, surgical adhesions, or internal fibrotic diseases of the liver or lungs, where scarring slowly destroys the organ.
It's incredible. But what about the animal itself? How does this amazing biology play out in its day-to-day life?
Their whole lifestyle is built around energy conservation. They're mostly nocturnal. They sit still on the lake bottom for long periods. They're ambush predators, using this powerful suction feeding to snap up prey that comes by.
I also read something surprising, that young axolotls can be, well, cannibalistic.
They can be, yeah. In crowded conditions, juveniles will often nip off each other's gills or even limbs.
And their regeneration ability kind of makes that okay.
It absolutely lowers the stakes. The long-term cost of that aggressive, opportunistic behavior is massively reduced because the victim can just regrow the damage perfectly. Their biology directly supports their behavior. It's a fascinating feedback loop.
Which brings us to a really deep and unfortunate irony. As amazing as they are barely hanging on in the wild.
It's a tragedy, really. They are critically endangered. The very specialization that made them so successful, their reliance on that cold, stable lake, became their greatest vulnerability.
What if?
Urban sprawl from Mexico City, pollution, and crucially, the introduction of invasive fish like tilapia and carp. These fish eat the young axolotls and outcompete them for food. Their unique world vanished.
And the result is that now there are far more axolotls in labs around the world being studied to help us
Then are left in their natural home. Their specialization was their superpower until the environment failed them.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what is the single biggest takeaway you want people to leave with?
That perfect, scar-free regeneration is biologically possible in a complex animal with a backbone. Scarring is not an inevitability, it's an evolutionary choice. The difference between us and them isn't what we have, but what's been switched off.
So the power to heal ourselves might already be written in our own DNA, we just lost the instruction manual.
Or maybe we just filed it away. The most profound lesson from the axolotl might be that the key to unlocking human regeneration isn't about inventing something new. It's about learning how to turn back our own developmental clock, finding the livers in that vast non-coding DNA we all carry, and reactivating an ancient potential we never knew we had. Our mission, as always, is to take a huge stack of sources, all the latest research, and really just distill it down to the core knowledge you need. And today we are heading into the ancient waters of Mexico City's lake system to meet a creature that seems to defy all the normal rules of biology. We're talking about the axolotl. You've probably seen a picture of Ambystoma mexicanum. It has this almost mythical quality to it.
It does, and that's not an accident. It's only native to one place, the lake system of Xochimilco. And its name, from Nahuatl, translates to something like water dog or even water monster.
And it's linked to the Aztec god Axolotl.
Exactly. The god who, according to legend, turned himself into an axolotl to escape being sacrificed. A survivor from the very beginning.
A perfect introduction. So for our deep dive today, we really want to focus on this one central mystery. Why is this specific salamander the absolute gold standard for regeneration?
Right. We need to unpack the biological trick it uses, staying a permanent juvenile, and then explore what its, frankly, bizarre, massive genome can teach us about our own health.
Things we thought were impossible, like reversing scars, maybe even repairing spinal cords.
And understanding cancer. It's all connected.
So let's start with that core concept you mentioned, the permanent juvenility. The technical term is neoteny.
Neoteny, yeah. And it sounds simple, but it's such a profound evolutionary choice. You look at an axolotl, you see its feathery external gills, its tail fin. It lives its entire life in the water.
Unlike, a frog or most other salamanders we'd think of.
Precisely. The standard amphibian life cycle is, aquatic larva, then this huge transformation called metamorphosis, and finally a terrestrial adult.
And the axolotl just skips that last part.
It skips the metamorphosis entirely. It goes from a larva to a sexually mature adult, all while keeping those juvenile features. The gills, the fin, even its skull structure stays more flexible, more juvenile. It's essentially an adult in a teenager's body.
But the programming for that transformation from metamorphosis, it must still be in their DNA somewhere, right? It's not just deleted.
Yeah. Not deleted, no. Yeah. It's just suppressed, very carefully suppressed. The whole mechanism comes down to thyroid hormone signaling.
Okay.
That hormone is the chemical trigger that tells other amphibians, okay, time to grow up, time to leave the water. But in the axolotl, either they don't produce enough of it, or more importantly, their cells just don't respond to it properly. The go button is basically switched off.
What happens if you try to force it? I'm sure someone in a lab has tried to flip that switch.
Oh, absolutely. You can give them thyroid hormone injections and they will metamorphose. They lose their gills, their skin changes, they try to become land animals.
There sounds like a butt coming.
Well, the irony is that it's terrible for them. This forced change usually causes a lot of health problems and it drastically shortens their lifespan. Evolution chose this path for a reason. The juvenile state is their peak performance state.
And that's where it gets relevant for us, for human medicine. Because as we mature, our cells or tissues, they get more rigid, more fixed, they scar.
Exactly. But because the axolotl is, in essence, a permanent juvenile, its tissues have this incredible plasticity. Scar formation is just. It's not part of their healing process.
And that plasticity, that's the billion-dollar target, right? Their cells just operate by a different rule book.
A completely different rule book. They are, without a doubt, the biological gold standard for regeneration in vertebrates.
And the list of what they can regrow, it's just mind-blowing. It's not like a little piece of tail.
No, we're talking about entire complex structures, a whole leg bone, muscle, nerves, skin, everything. But it gets wilder. They can regrow a crushed spinal cord, parts of their brain.
The brain.
Portions of it, yes. Their jaw, their retinas, even heart tissue that's been damaged.
And the crucial part you mentioned is that the result is perfect. What does perfect really mean here compared to how we heal?
It means true replacement, no loss of function, no scar tissue, and, this is critical, no cancerous growth, even with all that rapid cell division.
So when this process starts, does it look clean? Or is it chaotic at first?
That's a great question, because initially it's not elegant. When a limb is lost, the first step is the same as in our bodies. Close the wound fast. But they do it without building that fibrous collagen patch that becomes a scar.
Okay, so no scar. Then what?
Then the real magic begins. Underneath that healed skin, a structure forms that scientists call a blastema.
A blastema.
This is the key. Cells near the injury muscle cells, skin cells, even bone cells, they start to de-differentiate.
Meaning they kind of forget what they are. They go backwards.
Exactly. They revert to a more basic stem-like state. It's like a crew of specialist workers all suddenly becoming general purpose builders again.
So they become generic building blocks.
Yeah.
But it sounds a lot like cancer uncontrolled growth.
Oh, but it's not. This is where it gets incredible. These cells in the blastema, they retain something called positional memory.
Positional memory. They know where they were.
Precisely. They know if they were part of a wrist or an elbow. So the new growth follows this invisible blueprint. The arm regrows from the point of injury outwards, and the fingers reappear in the right order and size. It's organized reconstruction, not a chaotic lump.
So who's in charge? Who's reading that blueprint?
It's a coordinated effort, but here's the most critical piece of the puzzle we got from the sources. It all depends on the nervous system.
The nerves.
Yep. If you sever the nerves leading to the injury, the regeneration fails completely. The nervous system is like the conductor of this whole orchestra, controlling the signals and telling the cells where to go and what to become.
Okay, that level of control, that has to be written in the genome somewhere. Which brings us to the scale of their DNA.
And this is where researchers were just blown away. The axolotl genome is colossal. It's one of the largest ever sequenced.
How large are we talking?
Around 32 billion base pairs.
Wait, 32 billion? Humans only have about 3 billion? That's 10 times bigger.
10 times bigger. And that size made it incredibly difficult to sequence for years. It's full of these huge repetitive chunks of DNA. But when they finally cracked it, the biggest discovery wasn't some magic new regeneration gene. No. It's all about gene regulation. Many of the genes that power this process are genes that we have too.
We have them.
We do. They're just silenced. They're switched off in us after we're born. And that insight is profound. It suggests that humans might have these latent regenerative abilities just dormant.
So this completely reframes the goal of regenerative medicine. It's not about inventing a new power. It's about figuring out how to flip a switch that evolution turned off in us.
Exactly. And the challenge is understanding that switch. Why did it get turned off? A big part of it is likely our immune system. It's optimized for speed seal the wound, prevent infection, move on, not for a long, complex rebuilding project.
Which brings us to the medical applications. First up, scar-free healing.
Right. We heal with fibrosis, that collagen patch job. The axolotl heals with replacement, and its immune system is the key difference.
I remember reading about specialized immune cells, macrophages being really important.
They're critical. In us, macrophages clean up debris and then signal for the scar tissue. In the axolotl, a special type of macrophage comes in and basically tells the body, don't patch it, rebuild it.
And the applications there are obvious. Burn victims, surgery, but also internal scarring, right? Fibrotic diseases of the heart or lungs.
Absolutely. Then there's nerve repair. A severed spinal cord in a human is, catastrophic.
A life sentence, basically.
For an axolotl, it's routine. They just regrow it. So studying them gives us a live-in model for how to guide axons to reconnect properly, which is informing a lot of experimental therapies for paralysis.
And finally, that cancer paradox.
Yeah.
How can something that grows new limbs so fast not get tumors.
That control is the holy grail. The blastema is this explosion of cell growth, just like a tumor, but it always knows when to stop. It always organizes itself. So they are a perfect model for studying tumor suppression and what keeps cell cycles in check.
It's all about control. Okay, let's shift gears. Why did this happen in the first place? Why did evolution choose this permanent juvenile lifestyle for them?
It's a beautiful case of environmental optimization. They evolved in the high-altitude lakes of central Mexico. The water there was stable cold, full of nutrients, and permanent.
So there was no reason to leave the water.
Exactly. The land around those lakes was much more unstable, certainly harsh. So metamorphosis, that huge, energy-expensive process of preparing for land, it offered zero advantage.
So natural selection just favored the ones who stayed put.
It favored the ones who conserved energy, stayed in the stable environment, and reached sexual maturity faster, which is what neoteny allows them to do.
And their behavior reflects this low-energy life.
Perfectly. They're solitary, they're sedentary, they're most active at dawn and dusk. They are classic sit-and-wait ambush predators.
And they don't waste energy.
Not at all. And you see it in their senses. Their eyesight isn't great, so they rely much more on detecting vibrations in the water with their lateral line system and on smell. That's why they do that characteristic suction feeding. They feel a vibration, turn, and just inhale.
The sources also mentioned they aren't exactly social.
Not in the slightest. Interactions are either neutral or aggressive, and juvenile cannibalism is very common. They'll just bite off the limb of a sibling.
Which is where it all connects back. The irony is that their regeneration ability makes that behavior less costly.
It's a complete feedback loop. The selective pressure against that kind of accidental aggression is much lower when you know the victim can just regrow the limb perfectly.
A fascinating and slightly brutal system, which leads to the final tragic irony. This medical marvel is critically endangered in the wild.
It's heartbreaking. Their one and only home has been devastated by pollution and the urbanization of Mexico City. Invasive fish were introduced, and they ate the axolotls and their food.
So the paradox is that there are now far more of them in labs than in nature.
Exponentially more. Their greatest evolutionary strength, being perfectly specialized for one stable environment, became their downfall when we destroyed that environment.
So what's the big takeaway for you, the listener? The axolotl isn't some primitive creature. It's highly specialized, and it shows us that huge biological changes like gaining or losing regeneration aren't always about new genes. It's about timing. It's about regulation.
Absolutely. The biggest conclusion here is that scarring isn't a biological necessity, and complex regeneration is possible for vertebrates. Evolution didn't erase this ability from our DNA, it just regulated it differently. It pushed us to prioritize becoming a fixed adult form over retaining that juvenile plasticity.
Which brings us to our final thought for you to take away. If the axolotl's amazing ability is just the retention of a juvenile state that we all pass through, then the search for regeneration isn't about finding some alien technology. It's about finding the master clock, the biological timer that tells our cells it's time to grow up and stop rebuilding. What if the ability to regrow an organ is simply a question of developmental timing, and we just need to figure out how to wind the clock back? Thank you for diving deep with us.